Hello everybody, I am back with another Mr. Without topic, and in this section, or in this topic, I will be going over my thoughts on the MCU and going on why is it so successful, why is other studios trying to be like the MCU, and also giving my thoughts, and etc, etc. And for those who don't know where they're at and just enter my channel, this thing, what I'm doing is called Mr. Weird Thought Topic. It's basically a section in my channel where I give my thoughts on a certain topic and go full on detail and give a little also information about what I'm talking about. So besides that, let's get started on this video of Mr. Weird Thought Topic, the MCU. Alright, so let's get started on this. The MCU. We all know what the MCU, right, is. It's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's what has created an amazing universe of all our favorites, and they're still adding more iconic superheroes to this universe. And not only that, they are also expanding to the multiverse and stuff like that with the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. So if you haven't seen that movie, go check it out. It's not bad. It's worth giving it a try. Stuff like that. But besides that, the MCU has impacted so much throughout the years they have started, and has maybe even made other studios, whether it's Universal, Legendary, Warner Brothers, you name it, to create their own version of, or something similar to the MCU, where they want to make as much money. They want to make a whole universe where characters are connecting with each other, etc, etc. So my question is, why has, or what makes the MCU different? And before I give that information, I just want to state a little the MCU. The MCU has, at the moment, if you add Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, contains 28 films at the moment, plus it has a couple series, plus they have the brand new series that it just ended, Moon Knight. Those are the 4 series that I thought, if I'm not correct, are connected exactly with the MCU, and they're still planning to do more series and stuff like that. And to be honest, the MCU's revenue that I found at the moment has been, and may have increased since with other movies, is $21.4 billion, and I bet you it is increasing with all that stuff. And they have been shown to be the #1 movie franchise at the moment, and there are maybe others that are competing with them, but I don't think anything is truly surpassing them. And I thought of looking up the top 5 movies in the MCU that has the top ratings, the best that they made out of it, and stuff like that, which is Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, the Avengers 2012 movie. Then we have Avengers Age of Ultron, and finally SpiderMan No Way Home. Those are the top 5 movies that has made a lot of money, has also done well, and is the top 5 truly successful out of the whole franchise and stuff like that. And they have made so much money and stuff like that. And if I'm not correct, the first movie that started, which we all know, is the Iron Man movie that came out in 2008. Of course, it started with Robert Downey Jr., who started the whole franchise with the director known as Jon Favreau. I am so sorry, I can never say his last name. But you get what I'm trying to say, which came out in May 2nd of 2008, which, sorry about that, which came out very successful, which had a rating of 7.9 out of 10 in IMDb, 94 in Rotten Tomato and stuff like that, which showed that the movie was pretty successful and showed that it had potential. And of course, it also led to the Hulk, to Iron Man 2, and so far and so far. And from there, it has been very successful. There have been, of course, a couple movies here and there that weren't good, but they still did enough that maybe they were enjoyable, they were still watchable and stuff like that. But even though if one movie did not succeed in what they were planning, it still did not stop the whole franchise from continuing, from making a lot of money and impacting the world and stuff like that. And so, of course, I wrote a couple notes on why I think the MCU is so successful. And I'm not going to read it off, but I'm going to basically say, to start, my thoughts on the MCU, I love it. I've always been a fan of the Marvel. I've always been, happy that we have a whole universe with multiple characters joining together, having cameos in each other characters, references, and stuff like that. We all love that. But besides that, one of the things that I've always thought that made the MCU successful in my eyes is how it started. Because the way they started was they focused on one character, Iron Man. They made Iron Man movie. They didn't do it where they automatically started it as a big reference to or started doing where it mentioned this superhero, this. No. The movie started as its own thing. It started as Iron Man. Yes, they were probably reference to other superheroes, maybe here or there, and stuff like that. And I'll be honest, when the end credit ended, the movie gave us a hint of what may happen. What does this already have an existing world or not? But they and for those who don't know or have ever seen the ending credit, basically at the end of the movie, Tony Stark finally comes home after telling the world that he's Iron Man, yada yada, and kind of enjoying that he's Iron Man. And then once he enters his house, he sees a mysterious man staring out in the window and letting him know that after all the things he did, after all the trouble, that he has to deal with other things now. Now he has to deal with Tony. And kind of gives that reference that there's more to this world than we think. And then, of course, Hulk appears, the movie, which a lot of people have mixed feelings about, but I enjoy it. I don't care. That's one of the best Hulk movies, and you can fight me on that opinion, because, yeah. And with that movie, it didn't reference the Iron Man movie. It kind of gave off hints to it looks like this is in the same universe, because they kept on also doing the same thing where they would reference superheroes, they would reference the Winter Soldier program, they would reference hints of other superheroes here and there, but they weren't as noticeable. But it also got you thinking, like, wait, is this connected to the Iron Man movie? Hold up, wait a minute. And then of course we get that mid-end credit scene, which of course General Ross is in a bar drinking, kind of getting drunk after the failure of trying to defeat the Hulk and stuff like that. And all of a sudden we see somebody that's recognizable. We see Iron Man, Tony Stark, kind of going to him and letting him know, there was a reason why the Winter Soldier program was shut down, stuff like that. And of course he also lets him know that I can help you with your Hulk problem and stuff like that. And of course, when I saw that scene when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I was like, yo, are we gonna have a Hulk versus Iron Man movie? What does this mean? Is it actually connected? Which it also led to that, capturing the attention of the audience, giving us wonder. Is this bigger than we think? What other characters are they gonna mention next? And stuff like that. And like after Iron Man 2 did its own thing, it referenced other things. It started referencing more heroes. Even though it focused on one character at a time, it still referenced other stuff. Then came Thor. From Thor, it gave a reference to other characters. Then led to Captain America, the First Avenger. Then that's when we started noticing, okay, these movies are individual events that could be standalone movies, but the way they're doing it is they're slowly merging them together without not us realizing it. Or yes, we're noticing this movie connects to this movie references this movie. which it's also helping us catch our attention and wanting us to explore more. Hold up, is this going to lead up to something bigger? Which also at the end of Captain America: The First Avenger led to the Avengers, which also, that's also another reason why it's so successful. They took their time to focus on one character at a time, giving us a development with each character, letting us know who this character is, his origin, what he means to this universe that they're slowly making, which of course led us to an event in the Avengers, giving us a reason for them to, or giving the whole event a reason for them to join together, which I loved. When I saw Avengers, finally seeing Thor, Captain America, Hawkeye, Black Widow, Iron Man, etc., all those characters that we saw in different movies finally joining together, I was happy. I loved it. It was great. It was finally great that saying, oh shoot, we're actually getting a cinematic universe. And you know, I love how they took their time with, they didn't rush it. It didn't, and that's one thing. When I watched the movies, it didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel forced. It like felt natural. It felt like they were doing it to catch our attention little by little until they gave us a reason. But not only that, with the end of Avengers, they gave us a reference to an iconic villain that the Marvel comics and stuff like that we all know of, we have all heard of, Thanos. With Thanos, it basically referenced that this is bigger than we really think, that there is a bigger threat coming. And I think that's also what gave us more hope with that. And then they went back to, after that whole Avengers event, they focused again on each character, having each a development, having each movie feel different. And what I mean by that is, for example, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, I've heard people say, and I can see it as well, is how they say is basically a spy action movie. It has that spy features. Compared to Iron Man, it's all about action, adventure, tech, high tech, you know, and stuff like that. Hulk felt like a kind of like, not a horror, but it gave off that horror character, that have an indestructible creature that nobody can stop. Then we had Thor, which he was more like, had a mythology, had that had that whole, you know, Norse mythology vibe to it. Each movie was doing their own thing little by little. And then when they joined together, that's when it felt like a Marvel movie and stuff like that. And I am sorry if my phone is showing notifications and stuff like that. But besides all that, with all that, they kept on adding more and more reasons for us to watch it. They added new characters, they added new events. There were big events, and then there was an event that was leading to something universal in a way, which led into giving us a reference to Infinity War, to Endgame, and finally giving us the big villain that was hinting out in Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that, which I love. When I saw in one of the end credits where Thanos puts his glove on, the whole gauntlet, and goes, fine, I'll do it myself. I knew they were going to lead up to Thanos. We all, you know, there was theories, people were theorizing, people were talking about it. Like, compared to the old Marvel movies, I feel like they were trying too hard to make a comic movie instead of making a movie about these characters. Because the difference between Iron Man and Captain America or the Hulk and in the older movies of Marvel is they made the character feel realistic and feel like we can connect with these characters. We can, you know, understand that even though this character is from a comic book, it's fantasy, that they're slowly making it realistic. And I think that's the difference from the MCU and from the comics. The MCU still has that realistic feeling, that whole realistic vibe and stuff like that. Even though this is all fantasy, this is all unrealistic and stuff like that. But we all love, oh, could this really possible? How much would it be possible to make an Iron Man suit? This enough, and etc. etc. And that's what I also feel like, you know, that they had. They had great stories to tell. They were not afraid to, you know, maybe go a little bit dark, you know. But I think that's also one thing I've never liked about the Marvel is they never went too dark on stories and stuff like that. But they still had interesting stories, you know. And some of my favorite moments from the MCU has to do when they revealed SpiderMan in the Civil War, where we all got to see all our favorite characters from every movie in one movie, which was Avengers Endgame. And when I saw that movie in theaters, that was the biggest hype for the MCU at the moment. Like when that movie came out, everybody was talking about it. Everybody was loving it. Everybody was, you know, happy that we finally got to hear. And it was truly successful. Like, I mean, there are controversies where people say Infinity War wasn't better than Endgame, how Endgame was better than this movie and stuff like that. But no matter what, it showed that one movie impacted and created this whole big ass universe that we all love. And I know I'm not the only one that thinks that, you know, that this universe is made, because I'll be honest, I wish the DCEU did this. I wish other franchise did this, because the other franchise that is successful has its own universe is the MonsterVerse owned by Legendary, which I love. It has a similar vibe, but they focus one monster at a time and did that. And I think that's what makes them successful. Instead of forcing everything at once, they said, okay, here's Iron Man, enjoy it. Oh, you liked it? Okay, here's Hulk. Oh, you actually enjoyed it even though it wasn't good? Here's Captain America. Here's Thor. Here's this small character. Here's this small character. And eventually, little by little, we were like, oh, okay, I love this character. I love how this character. Oh, these two characters are in a movie together. I love it. And that's also one thing that I also loved. Some characters from other superheroes were either referenced, were part of that cameo and stuff like that, which I was happy. I loved when I saw Spider-Man and you know, have Iron Man, even though I wasn't a big fan of the mentor stuff, because if I'm not correct, in the comics, Spider-Man and Iron Man really never got along as the way they are in the movies. But still, I cannot complain. And I'll be honest, yes, there are movies that I hate or I dislike, or it just never caught my attention, or it's just like, no. Like, I'll be honest, some of the MCU movies that I have not seen is Eternal. It's and I'm sorry, it's a movie that I cannot say I want to see it. Like, a lot of people have told me to watch it, give it a try. Sure, eventually I will give it a try, but for now it just doesn't catch me. WandaVision, that's a show that, I will be honest, it didn't catch my attention. The show that caught my attention the most was Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I love the story. I love how Falcon went from basically Captain America's kind of, in a sense, sidekick to being his own character, to becoming the new, you know, Captain America with his own new suit. And I loved, and it's comic accurate. Also with Bucky, how he went from the Winter Soldier to being his own thing and dealing from everything that had the kind of the after effect of him being, you know, the Winter Soldier. But besides that, like, the MCU has created something amazing, worth watching. And to this day, I still watch Iron Man, and I still watch the beginning. I love the first 4 stages, the new stages that they have, which, you know, it's good. And I know I'm not the only one that loves the MCU. And yes, like I said before, there are moments that, you know, there are movies that we're like, there are some movies that we hate. There are movies that are controversial. There are movies that we all cheer for and love, you know, and stuff like that. And I think that's what other studios are trying to do. They're trying to do the same thing. Give off that same feeling that fans want. But like I said, the thing that made them successful is they took their time. They focused on small things at a time. They made sure to start something small, to slowly grow and grow and grow into this big universe. And now they're doing multiple multiverse and stuff like that. Those great events. And I can't wait to see what the MCU has to bring, because one of the recent shows they did was Moon Knight, which is a great show. It's not bad. It still has small things here and there where I feel like they could have fixed the show. But besides that, the show is still enjoyable. It still introduces a character that even I don't know about. Moon Knight, I didn't know much about, but it still makes me want to know more about these characters. And that's also one thing that also I love. Iron Man wasn't a big character before the MCU. Not much people, I'll be honest, I wasn't a big fan of Iron Man in the sense where I had a lot of knowledge of who he was. But that's what I love the MCU. They introduce characters, and those characters, for me, I want to know more about these characters, who they are, their history. It makes me want to read some of the comics. And I was happy when I saw SpiderMan. I was happy to see that kind of comic accurate suit that he would wear in the comics. I love how he went from kind of a small character to making his own movie that impacted and created something I love, which it had two other iconic Spider-Mans. It had Tobey Maguire, it had Andrew Garfield, their own Spider-Man in one movie, all three, which shows how impactful this universe is, the MCU, and how nothing at the moment will beat them. And I also want to know your thoughts on it. What are things you love about the MCU? What are things you hate about it? Why do you think the MCU is successful and stuff like that? Because it's still something, amazing. It's still growing. We're gonna have more events, more big events, more characters being introduced. Like, we may have introduced or hinted Fantastic Four. We may get characters like She-Hulk. We may get characters like the Daredevil and the Defenders and stuff like that, and etc., etc. Even Ghost Rider, the Punisher, and those characters, I can't wait to see how the MCU portrays them. Because I'll be honest, there are moments here and there where the way they do certain characters, I was like, I kind of wish they made it more like the comics. But that's the thing that's the MCU that I like. The MCU is not like the comics. It's inspired and has those moments based from the comics. It's its own thing where we can't complain. That's not how the comic goes. No, this character, no. It's its own thing. It feels different. Like I said, its inspiration is the comics. Every character that's from the comics, they're slowly trying to develop, make it into adaptation to the MCU, which I can't complain. The only one I'm probably a little worried about is the whole X-Men thing. How they're gonna introduce the X-Men. But besides that, I can't complain with the MCU. The only thing, I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of is how Disney owns MCU. Yes, and that's one opinion that I have to say. I'm not a fan of the Disney company owning MCU. When I found out that the MCU was being bought by Disney, I was worried because Disney has been known to censor stuff. If it's too adult, they will, and that's what they've been doing. They were slowly letting the MCU do its own thing. But to be honest, I would have preferred if the MCU or Marvel Studios kind of worked with Disney, not for. Because they could have worked with other companies and created other movies and stuff like that, and could have made the movies more dark with certain characters. And I feel like certain characters might be censored. But so far, besides all that, I can't complain. I'm happy that the MCU exists. I'm happy that we have characters from comics, live action, seeing Iron Man fly, use his weapons, see Thor use his hammer, swing it and throw it, see Captain America use his shield, and just see so many other characters that I love. And I hope you guys feel the same way, as hype, energetic, loving for the MCU, and hope that truly support the MCU. And I know there were some other movies that I didn't talk about or give my thoughts on how that movie also impacted the MCU, because of course every movie in the MCU has an impact for the audience, has done something to help the MCU grow. And that's also another thing I want you guys to let me know. What's your favorite MCU, or which MCU do you think has impacted a lot to the MCU? But besides that, that's my whole thoughts on the MCU. And I hope you guys enjoyed my old thoughts on the MCU. Yes, I know I could have gone more into better details, maybe a little more history on the MCU, and maybe one other day I could talk a full video on how the MCU really started and stuff like that. But besides that, that's all I gotta say about the MCU. And maybe one day I can do a video where I talk about each movie and give my thoughts, what I loved about it, what I hated about it, what they could have done different, and stuff like that. But besides that, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what other topic you want me to talk about. I already did the DCEU, but I may talk about more about the DCEU and stuff like that. But besides that, again, thank you for watching. And like I always say, I'm weird, don't judge.